I still wanted to know what happened. Beers in hand, we sat at the back of a new hole-in-the-wall bar, and Tom explained, "Well, we caught her outside and alone as planned, but she managed to rip off both our ski masks. Once she saw our faces, we knew we were in trouble, and she was a vicious biter. One thing led to another, and she got knocked out pretty hard. Jake said we had to get rid of her since she'd seen our faces, and we came up with the plan to drive her off the bridge. We didn't want to do it. It just got out of hand." It made sense, at least in our already twisted perspectives. Jake simply nodded along to this explanation, his expression neutral. I watched his face as Tom spoke, but not a single reaction was evident. At that point, I was beginning to suspect something darker, but I was still enamored of our new strength. It was also our turn to assault Jake's boss. The quiet and calm threat in our companion's eyes brooked no argument. It was up to Tom and I to make it happen, and I honestly thought I would have the chance to make this third attack not end in murder. I also honestly thought it would be the last, for the first time Tom and I were together without Jake. I tried to come up with a nonchalant way to ask, but as we sat outside Jake's factory and watched his boss with binoculars, I realized there would be no hiding my concern. It was better to be direct. "So, how did you guys end up having to kill Lying Bitch exactly?" We already went over that," Tom replied. He took a bite from one of his donuts. "Ugh, I've gained like 5 pounds since this all started. I can't help but stress eat." I lowered my binoculars as another car passed our spot. "So, you are stressed?" He didn't reply. His eyes remained on his hands. "Did Jake make it necessary to kill her?" He winced. I don't know. Not exactly. She got her masks off somehow in the struggle, but he was the only one who insisted we couldn't let her live after she saw our faces." He wiped donut crumbs away from his mouth. "When I didn't want to do it at first, he got scary." That's what I'd expected to hear. "So we can assume he'll get scary again if we don't go through with this." Lifting my binoculars to peer at the factory ground some more, I watched Caluous Bastard scold a worker whose shirt sleeve had gotten caught in an improperly tuned machine and torn off. Jake had already told us the kind of things he might be saying, and I could hear them now. "Get back to work, and be less clumsy next time." As expected, nobody fixed the machine. The same worker continued to warily slide materials through it, this time with his other sleeve rolled up nearly to his shoulder. I might have asked Tom to look up some videos of what happened to workers who truly got injured this way, but we hadn't brought our cell phones. They were basically live tracking devices. The more I'd learned about our society's soft secrets, the more I realized that we're all basically slaves to multiple invisible masters. Those who tracked our every call, email, text, and location were among the higher lords. These bosses at our places of work were actually the absolute lowest on the totem pole of the shit waterfall, and yet they took the brunt of our hate. Meanwhile, 95% of my productivity went to some faceless asshole shareholder living up in a mansion somewhere. We should have been allied with our cruel bosses against those unknown men. Why were we instead at odds? Making an excuse about having to piss, I walked a couple blocks and made an anonymous call from a payphone. My call would not bear fruit for a few days. For now, my lunch hour was over, and it was time to head back to work. I returned and said goodbye to Tom. Work was strange and different. My new men were productive and happy, and we were all having a great time working, in a way I'd never thought possible. The office was supposed to be a place of quiet desperation and internal suffering in 1,000 nebulous ways that could not be resisted. That was not what we had been told all our lives. What we had been shown every day of our careers, what television promised was the only way, turned out once incentives were aligned correctly and the team was all on the same page, work didn't have to be shit. Work didn't have to be shit. I sat at my desk and stared at the wall for a good 20 minutes as I repeated those words over and over in my head. If work didn't have to be shit, then why was the source of that universal cruelty that made hollow shells out of modern men? Where did it come from? Why did it exist? It took nearly a week, but I managed to time our stakeout correctly. Tom and I sat on a low hill among the run-down buildings south of the factory, while the inspector I'd tipped off came to take a look at the factory's many no-doubt violations. "He's outside and looking at the back near the river," Tom said excitedly. "I think, yes, he sees the illegal dumping too." I grinned and took my turn on the binoculars. The inspector was a balding man in an aging brown suit, but he did not look happy. He stood alone with Callous Bastard while they both argued with sweeping hand motions. This would take care of Jake's boss, and there would be no need for a beating that I knew our third accomplice expected to end in death. "Damn it, Callous Bastard," I muttered. "We're trying to save your life here. Just face the music and find another job." Finally, the argument stopped. Callous Bastard went back into the factory, slipped into his office, and then returned as casually as possible. Curious, I watched him hand over a brown envelope. What is he doing?" Tom asked. My heart sank as I saw the inspector take it. The envelope's color, it matched his fading suit, and I immediately understood how factories like this one avoided cleaning up their act. The balding man pulled out and rifled through a stack of cash before quickly putting it away inside his jacket. "God damn it, he paid him off!" Crestfallen, Tom asked, "So we really have to do this, don't we?" I hated to admit it, but yeah. We had a clandestine meeting with Jake, scheduled 3 nights later, at that bar an hour out from town. We again paid in cash and conversated over the progress of the operation. Jake swallowed his first beer in a single breath and slammed it on the table. "So, how's the plan coming together, guys?" I looked at Tom, but I knew it would be up to me to speak. "It's coming together, I guess. I had a concern. The first 2 ended with deaths. I'd like to avoid that if possible, since it was never the plan." Scowling, Jake stared us both down. "My friend Jord, he had his left arm degloved 6 months ago, because Callous Bastard refused to pay for proper maintenance. Do you know what degloving is?" Holding back a small urge to vomit, I nodded weakly. "You know the kind of screams a man makes when he's degloved?" Jake continued, his gaze haunted. "Because I do." Tom covered his mouth and excused himself to get us each another beer. "That's all right, buddy," Jake called after him with sincere permission. "You don't need to hear this." He leaned closer to me and listed the 14 injuries and 2 deaths the men at his factory had suffered in the last several years. "I get it. We're men. We work dangerous jobs, but you know what rides my ass? You know what makes me violent?" He accepted one of the 3 new beers as Tom returned. Taking a swig of it, he sighed darkly. "Motherfucking Callous Bastard, always profusely promising to fix things, and for a few months things do get better, and then he just kinda lets it slide. Once corporate attention moves on, what makes me violent is that little fucking speech I've heard a half a dozen times. That stupid speech. This was a tragic accident and could have happened to any of us, so we all need to pitch in to keep safety standards high. No, Bastard, it could not have happened to any of us. It could have happened to us guys actually on the floor, but no, not you, because you're safe in your little office." It might have been a bad time to spark that conversation, but it already been on my mind. "Jake, is he who you're really mad at? Shouldn't you be angry with the corporate higher-ups that let him do that so they can get rich off of your labor?" He went dead cold and just stared at me. I gulped. Like, what if Callous Bastard does die? And I'm not saying we're going to kill him. What if they just replace him with another? The way he runs that place makes them more money, and that's all they care about. Tom cut in for the first time. "You know how you could tell?" Jake replied flatly. How? Go visit other factories your company runs, he explained, looking rather proud of himself. If they've each got their own Caluus bastard, then you'll know. Jake stood then, pointed down at each of us with a furious glare, and then, as we'd practiced, he walked casually away, so as not to make a scene.